Welcome everyone. As we learn Chok Yisrael for Parshas Bhaloscha Yom Rishon, Day 1, Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach, sponsored by Mifal Chok HaOlami. Vayidaber Hashem u'Moshe Leimer u'Malel Hashem, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, Malel Hashem and Moshe Leimer, Daber al Aaron, speak to Aaron, v'amarte love, and say to him, Bhaloscha es haneros, when you cause the flames to rise on the lamps of the menorah, El mul pnei menorah, towards the center of the menorah, Ya'iru shivas haneros, you should cause to illuminate the 7 lamps. Says the Targum, Malel Aaron v'sem alei ba'adlokusach yasbot sinaya lekovel apei menarta yon menarin shava vot sinaya. So now Rashi says Bhaloscha. Why does it say to cause it to rise? Why doesn't it say it to light them? Lama nismecha. First Rashi says Lama nismecha parshas hamenorah leparshas hanesiim. Why is the parsha menorah written closely in juxtaposition to the parsha of the gifts of the princes of the tribes? Lefi shekishira Aaron Chanukas hanesiim, when Aaron saw the dedication of the nesiim and the gifts that they did, chol sha'oz daita, he became disheartened. Kishaloi ha'yimam b'Chanukah, he wasn't with them in the dedication, in the gifts. Loihu, not him, v'loi shiftai, not the tribe of the Kohanim, of Levi. Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu chayecha, by your life, shalacha gedolah mishalahem, your gift is more than theirs. She'ata madlik, because you will every day light umeitav es haneros, and prepare the lamps. Says Rashi again, Bhaloscha, why not madlik? Why Bhaloscha, when you cause it to rise? Al shem sha'lahav oila, the flame arises, kosev bad l'kosen. That's why when it says by their kindling lashon aliyah, to cause it to rise, because you have to light it enough that the flame should rise independently by itself. Shetzarach lahadlik ad shetei shalheves oila me'elah. You have to light it until the flame has enough oomph to rise by itself. And it's also to tell you that Aaron had to step up, had to elevate himself. V'aydosh Rabbi Seinu in the Sifrei, Mikan Shemailo Isol Lefnei HaMenorah, there was a step before the menorah, like a little platform, Shaleh HaKohen Oimed Umeitav, because upon it the Kohen would stand and prepare the lamps. El Mul Pnei HaMenorah, towards the center of the menorah. This is the Ner Emtzai, known as the Ner Maravi, the middle lamp. The 6 other lamps had their wicks, 3 on one side, 3 on the other side, tilted towards the center. El mul ner ha'emtzai, towards the middle lamp. She'enai b'konim, the middle lamp is not a branch, ela beguf shel menorah, it is the actual core of the menorah. Ya'iru shivas haneros, should light the 7 lamps. Shisha shal sheishes hakonim, the 6 lamps. On the 6 branches, shloisha mizrachim, the 3 to the east, painim l'mula emtzai, their wicks were tilted, apsila shebehem, their wicks were tilted towards the middle, v'chein shloisha maravoyim, and also the 3 towards the west, rashi apsilos, their wicks l'mula emtzai, was tilted towards the middle. Now, why was this? And the answer is to show you that it wasn't for light, because Hashem doesn't need, if it was for light, it wouldn't go inward, it would be to cast light all over the place. By pushing it inward, it was only to show Hashem doesn't need light in Hashem's house. Hashem doesn't need light. The light is for us, but not for the Rabbeinu Shalom. It says, Pasuk Gimel, Vayas Cain Aaron did so, El Mul Pnei HaMenorah, towards the center of the menorah, Helen Nerosai, causes he caused the fire of the lamps to rise. Kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe, like Hashem commanded to Moshe. Says Rashi, Vayaskein Aaron lahagid shivchoi shel Aaron. This is a praise of Aaron, shaloi shina, that he didn't deviate. Now, of course, there's a lot of discussion. Of course, he didn't deviate. He's going to do different than what Moshe Rabbeinu told him. But the Mefarshim learned that he did it every day. And even though it became already habitual, he did it with the same hislavus, the same feeling and the same passion as he did it the very first time. As the Targum says, "Va'avad kein Aaron l'kovel apei menarta ad leik botzina kamon depaket adino yas Moshe." Pasuk Dalet says, "V'zeh ma'isa menorah," and this was the making of the menorah, miksha zahav, hammered out of gold, ad yerecha, ad pircha, its base, its flowers, miksha here was all from one hammered out piece. Kamara asher hera Hashem es Moshe, like the vision that Hashem showed Moshe, kain asa es menorah, so was the menorah made. V'dein oivad menarta, nigido dahav ad shida ad shoshana, nigido hi, says Rashi, it says in the pasuk, that means that Hashem pointed with a finger. Moshe Rabbeinu had a difficulty to know how to do it. Hashem, so to speak, pointed to him like this. Miksha means batodin balaz. It means hammered out. Lashon dola dod nokshin, like the knees hammer against one another. Eshesh shel kikar zav haisa. It was a block of a talent of gold. Or makish bekurnis, and it banged with a hammer. V'chaytech bekashel, and chiseled with a chisel. Lefashet evareha kitikunan, to make its limbs in the proper way. However, they didn't make a bunch of branches and then stick them together. It wasn't made different branches and then attached together. It was made from one piece, one talent of gold, and it was chiseled out. Ad yerecha ad pircha, from the base until the delicate flower. Yerecha yasheda shal hariglayim, that was the base which was on the legs of the menorah. Chalul, it was hollow, kederech menorahs kesef shelifnei asarim, like the candelabras of silver that the noblemen had in those days. Ad yerecha ad pircha, to the base, to the flowers. Yerecha hi hasheda. The yerecha is the box on the bottom, shal hariglayim, over the legs. Chalul, as we said, ad yerecha ad pircha kalay megufa shel menorah kula. The base of the menorah, the core, the middle of the menorah, the kala toliba, and all that's attached to it. Ad yerecha, to the base, shu evergadol, which is a big part. Ad pircha, to the flowers, shu maisa dakshaba, it's a delicate part of it. Hakol miksha, it was all hammered out. Now, the word ad means to this, to that. V'derech ad l'shamish b'loshen zeh, to this, to that. K'moy migadish, from the pile of grain, v'ad kama, to the standing grain, v'ad kerem zayis, to a grove of olives. Says Rashi, Kamara Asher Hera, like Hashem showed, Kitavnis, like the form Asher Hereu Bahar, which Hashem showed on the mountain, Kameshinema, like it says in Shemais, or Re'eva Asei Bistavnisam, you should see and do as their form. Kain says the menorah. Now, who did the menorah? Misha Asa, in other words, Betzalel. Medrash Haggadah is a medrash that it came about by itself through the machinations of Hashem. Medrash Haggadah al Yidei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nazis Me'eleh. It came about by itself. It rose by itself through the hands of Hashem. Take the Levium, which Rashi will say, persuade them with words, mitoch b'nei Yisrael, from the midst of b'nei Yisrael, and do the rituals to purify them. They'll be shaved, they'll be waved. Rashi says, what does it mean? Kach es Levium. Not physically, but kochem b'dvarim, persuade them with words. Ashreichem, fortunate are you, shetizku liyos shamashim l'makom, that you merit being the sextons of the Rebbeinu Shalom, to serve the Rebbeinu Shalom. And now we learn from the Navi of Zechariah, as the Navi of Zechariah talks, Roni v'simchi bas Tzion, sing and rejoice, O daughters of Tzion. In other words, Yerushalayim. The Navi is talking to Yerushalayim. Ki hineni ba v'shachanti b'seichech, I will once again come and dwell in your midst, Nu'um Hashem, says Hashem. And at that time, v'nilvu goyim rabim al Hashem, many nations will be Megayer and joined to Hashem b'yom hahu, v'hayu li la'am, and they will be to me as a nation, v'shachanti b'seichech. I will dwell in your midst, in Yerushalayim. I won't go to them, to their countries. V'yodat, and it will be known, ki Hashem tzavokes, that Hashem, the Lord of hosts, Shalachani Eloich, sent me to you to prophesy. V'nochal Hashem es Yehuda, and once Hashem will take his inheritance in Yehuda. V'nochal Hashem es Yehuda, Chelka, Hashem will make Yehuda his portion, al admas HaKodesh, on the holy land of Yerushalayim. Uvacharoid b'Yerushalayim, he will choose once again Yerushalayim over all the other lands. Has kol basar mipnei Hashem, silence all flesh from before Hashem, as the Rishonim tell us this means desist from your idolatry. Ki ne'or, Hashem will awaken mima'ayin kachai, from his holy habitat. Vayar'eni, the Navi says, and it was shown to me as Yeshua HaKohen Gadol, Oimed Lefnei Malach Hashem, the Yeshua ben Yoitzadek, was being judged because his sons married those that weren't fit for them. Va'asatan Oimed Al Yaminoi L'Sitnoi, and the Satan is standing to his right to prosecute Yeshua ben Yoitzadek. Vayomer Hashem el HaSatan, and Hashem will tell the Satan, Yigar Hashem b'cha HaSatan. Hashem rebukes you, Satan. V'yigar Hashem b'cha, and he will rebuke you, Habaycher b'Yerushalayim. Hashem who chose Yerushalayim. How could you start up with Yeshua ben Yoitzadek? How could you start up with him? For Yeshua ben Yoitzadek was an ember saved from fire. He was thrown into the fire together with Achav, and he came out of the furnace alive. He was Mekadosh Shem Shemayim. And how could you try to prosecute him? And how could you try to provoke him? And now in the Ksuvim, it's interesting. It's the first time we don't have from Mishlei, we have from Tehillim. And this is the first parak of Tehillim. Ashri Aisha Asher Lo Halach. Ba'atzas Risham, fortunate is the man who doesn't go in the counsel of the wicked, of Derech HaTorm Lo Yamad. He doesn't stand on the path of the sinner. Over Moshev Leitzim Lo Yashiv, he doesn't sit amongst the cynics. Reb Miller always would say, why did David HaMelech start Tehillim in such a almost negative way? Why doesn't he start Tehillim with Tov L'Hodos LaHashem, or Ani Svilah, I am the man of prayer? Millis would say, when you come to a career of Tehillim, of singing to Hashem, the first thing you should know is where not to sit in shul. Don't sit where the scoffers are, where the cynics are. That could damage you, it could damage your family for generations. Kiyam Messias Hashem Cheftzai, what should be your desire? Your desire, your pursuit should be the Torah of Hashem, of Sarasa, in his Torah Yega Yomam V'Layla. You should meditate day and night. And then you'll be like a tree planted by rivers of water, by tributaries of water, Asher Pirya Yitain Be'itai, whose fruit will sprout and prosper in its time. V'aleyu lo yibal, and even their leaves, even the sicha, even the idle discussion of the Torah person is worthwhile. Even their sichas chulin tzricha talmud v'chol asher yasa yatzliach, and whatever they do will prosper. Lo yichein rishon, not so is the fate of the wicked. Ay kiyem kamoitz asher tidfen ruach, they're like the worthless chaff which blows away in the wind. Al Kain, therefore, lo yikamu rishon b'mishpat. In the next world, lo yakumu rishon b'mishpat. In the next world, the wicked won't be able to stand in judgment. The chatoim badas tzadikim, the sinners won't be there amongst the council of the righteous. Ki yodea Hashem, Hashem knows derech tzadikim, the way of the righteous. V'derech rishon tovei, the way of the wicked will perish. So we have to know. David HaMelech is telling us to look to be a chacham araya as hanoilid, that we shouldn't go after the fleeting pleasures of the wicked, because at the end of the time they will perish and they will not be there. They won't be able to stand in judgment, and they won't be able to enjoy in the counsel of the righteous. And now our adventure for today is the third parak of Masechta Shvias, as it's the first day of the week. So we're holding by the Seder of Zraim. I already made a bracha. And we're talking about in a Shemitah year. So in a Shemitah year, of course, we can't fertilize our field, because fertilizing is benefiting the land, which you're not allowed to do during a Shemitah year. But what do you do when you have piles of manure? Manure, after all, the animals have manure, and manure is a fertilizer. So when could you take the fertilizer and pile it up in piles in the field, in dung heaps in the field? When the goyim that work their field during Shemitah, or the non-observant farmers transgress and work their fields, when they're finished fertilizing and the season of fertilizing is over, then you're allowed to take the fertilizer out to the field. That's Dippin and Rameh. Rabbi Yehuda says we wait until the dung dries out, and it's not a good fertilizer anymore. Rabbi Yehuda Mishiyivash Hamosuk. It's interesting that the fertilizer is called the sweetener. Dung is not very sweet, but it sweetens the ground. So Mishiyivash Hamosuk, when the sweetener dries out. Rabbi Yisrael, it has to be more than dry out. Mishiyikosher, it has to thicken and form knots. So then it's already not good for fertilizers, so then you could take it out into the field. As we holding in the second Mishnah in the third parak of Shvias, Ad Kama Mizablin, when we make the piles in the field, it's very important that it shouldn't look like we're spreading it out in the field to fertilize the field. So what we do is we make 3 piles. Ad shalosh ashpatos, you could make 3 piles in an area of a Beisah. Each pile shall eser mashpelos, each pile containing 10 containers of dung, each one shall lesech. Each container having a lesech. A lesech is 15 sa. So every pile should have 10 containers. In other words, every pile should have 10 lesech. So you could do 3 piles to a Beisah. It doesn't look like you're fertilizing the field, because you're heaping it on these huge piles. The Tanakama says, Moisifin ala meshpelos, in the 3 piles you could add more containers. You could have like 20 containers of 10 lesach, but ve'ein moisifin ala shpatos, you can't have more than 3 piles, because that's already spreading it out a lot in the saw and makes it look like maybe you're fertilizing. Reb Shimon Haimer, since they're huge piles, you could increase af ala ashpatos. You could increase the piles and make more than 3 piles as well. Mishnah Gimel tells us, Oisa adam esadeyu shalosh ashpatos lebeisa. And here, the chiddush of this, that Reb Shimon is adding, is that you could make these piles with even less than 10 lesach. You can make piles that are smaller, as long, says the Rav, as that each pile has at least 3 lesach of manure. You could have 3 piles, each one containing as little as 3 sa. Yoser mikain. Let's say you want to make more piles. Says Reb Shimon, machatziv, you could make as many piles with 3 lesech as the legs of a pot that has many legs. Divrei Reb Shimon. The Chachamim say, if you want to make more than 3 piles, that looks like you might be fertilizing your field. You cannot do that at sheyamik shloisha unless you dig below the top soil 3 tvachim, or at sheyagvia shloisha, or you elevate it over the top soil 3 tvachim. So then it's clear that you're not doing fertilization. Oisa adam zivloi oitzer. The Tanakama says you could make one huge pile of dung. Remeir says then you might do it throughout the field. That huge pile might cover the whole field, and then it'll look like you're fertilizing the field. So Remeir Eiser ad shiyamek shleisha, unless you dig down 3 tefachim below the topsoil, ayad shiyagbia shleisha, or elevated above the topsoil 3 tefachim. If you had just a little manure, you could put it in one pile and add to it slowly. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Eiser, because he says the first time you put down the little amount, it could look like you're fertilizing until you make it 3 tefachim below, or you make it 3 tefachim above, or you put it on rock, which of course is not fertilization. Now here in Mishnah Daled, we talk about the animals. If you had nowhere to keep your animals except in your field, now when animals stay in the field, they go to the bathroom, and that could look like you're fertilizing the field. So Amadayer Esadeyu, if you want to make your field into a pen to hold your animals, then you don't let the animals roam freely throughout your land, because then that looks like you want to fertilize your land on Shvius, which would be Aser. Rather, you make a corral of just 2 sa of the land. So it's clear that you just need a place for your animals to roam. Then let's say what happens when those 2 sa get full of dung. So then you have, the corral has 4 walls. So let's say you have 2 sa on the right of the field. So the middle, the wall that's in the middle of the field, you leave that there. You take the 3 walls of the pen and you put it on the left side. So you switch it from the square of 2 sa of the right side, and you put it as a pen now on the left side. So you leave the middle wall and you take the other 3 walls, Oiker Shalosh Ruchais, you take the other 3 walls and put it on the left side instead of on the right side. You leave the middle wall there. So you're just shifting the box from the right side to the left side. So now you have it in 4 sa. Nimtza medaya beis arba sa. You're allowed to pen 4 sa. Shimon Gamliel says you could actually do 8 sa. So you have 1 on the right side, 1 on the left side, 1 below on the right side, and 1 below on the left side. So you have 4 squares of 2 by 2 sa. So it's a total of 8 sa. Rav Shimon Gamliel Aimer Beis Shmoina sa. Now, what would be if your whole field is 4 sa? So you start with a square on the 2 sa, then you do the square on the other 2 sa. Now you fertilized your whole field. That doesn't look good. So you have to leave a space that you don't let the animals roam because of Marasayin. If your whole field was 4 sa, Mishayir Mimena Mixas, you leave part of it not with the animals, it shouldn't look like you want to fertilize the whole field. Now, what happens after the field becomes full with dung? What do you do with it? You take the dung out of the corral and you make those 3 piles that we learned earlier in the previous Mishnah, and you put it in the 3 ashpatos, each one having 10 mashpelos, 10 containers of 10 lesach each one having, what was the amount? 10 containers of a lesach each. And that's how you pile it, Kederach HaMezablin, as you took care of the fertilizer. Now, we're going to learn about if somebody wants to quarry stone. You know, when I think about this, I think about my father, Olav Shalom, in Auschwitz, the Nazis, made him work in the quarries and chisel stone in the quarries. So, let's say somebody has in his field stone under earth, and he wants to dig the earth to uncover the stone. Now, it might look like he's digging the earth to make the field ready for planting. So you can't do that unless the stone was already uncovered. How much stone? Lo yiftach adam machzei batchila l'seich sadeyu. A person shouldn't dig and uncover a quarry of stone in his field on Shvias, ad sheyu by shalosh murbios, unless there is already uncovered 3 cubes of stone. Now these cubes are made up of 9 logs, 9 standing logs of rack. So you have each cube is 3 by 3 with the height of 3, and there's in that 3 by 3 by a height of 3 there is a log of rack 1 by 1 by 1. So in 3 by 3 by height of 3 there's 9 logs. So each cube has 9 logs, which is a total of 27 logs of rock. So lo yiftach adam machzei betchila l'seich sadeyu, he shouldn't dig to uncover rock in his field, achia by shalosh murbios, until you have 3 cubes of rock, shein shalosh al shalosh al rum shalosh, which is the height of 3 with the width of 3 with the length of 3, the width of 3, the length of 3, and the height of 3. So that's 9, each one being, there's 9 1 by 1 by 1 standing pillars, so to speak, of rock, and 3 such cubes would have 27 such logs, shiurin esrim v'sheva avonim. Now, Geder sheyesh by eser avonim, a fence, a rock wall that has 10 stones, shel masli shnayim shnayim, each stone could be carried by 2 people. It takes 2 people to carry them. We're not going to say that he's dismantling such a chashuv rock wall unless he needs it for construction. He wouldn't do it just to clear the area to plant underneath. And therefore, you could take them away on Shemitah because it's clear that you're not doing it for planting purposes. Shir Gader Asar Tfachim, the shir of the Gader is 10 Tfachim. If it's less than 10 Tfachim, Pachas Mikain, then it's a Machzev. The Gaimimai, you could chisel away the rock, ad Pachas Mea Aretz Tefach, but you have to leave. You have to leave that within a tefach of the ground. He could cut it down until there's within a tefach of the ground, so then it's obviously not doing for planting because there's still a tefach of rock there, so he's not doing it for planting, rather he's doing it for construction. Now, but when do we need to leave that amount? When he's clearing it from his own field. Because if he's clearing it from his own field, he might be doing it to plant. But if you're taking rock from somebody else's field, you're not doing it to clear his field. You're doing it because you need the rock for construction. You could take whatever you want, whatever stone, you could do it all the way down to the ground. And even if it's your land, the only time you're not allowed to do it is only if you didn't start to take it for construction before the Shemitah. If you already started before the Shemitah, what you want to take, you're allowed to take. Avonim osan hamacharesha, rocks that were already loosened by the plow. They were covered, v'niskalu, and they got uncovered. If there's 2 rocks there, which is so heavy that it needs 2 people to carry it, such rocks are obviously used for construction purposes. You could take them, and with them you could take the other rocks. Now, if you're clearing your field, now of course the Rishonim say obviously you can't be clearing your field to facilitate planting. But if you're clearing your field because you want the rocks for construction, noitel esel yonis, you could take the upper rocks as long as you leave the rocks that are touching the ground. So it's clear, since there's still rocks on the ground, that you're not taking it to clear the land for planting. V'chen garger shel tzroris, a pile of pebbles, or gal shel avonim, a heap of rocks. Noitel esel yonis, you could take the upper ones, and leave the ones touching the land. So since the land is still covered with rocks, you're not doing it for planting purposes. Im yesh teim sela oikash, if however underneath them is rock, so obviously it's not for planting purposes, or stubble, which you can't plant, then harieli yonatela, you could take it, remove it all the way down to the stubble, all the way down to the rock. Now here's an interesting thing. You're not allowed to do on Shvias anything that will facilitate the benefit of working the land. You can't even do it before Shemitah if it looks like you're doing it for the Shemitah year. So therefore, ein boinim madregas al pi hagei oyos, you can't build steps down to the irrigation canals. You want the gayos are like ravines which contain water. So Erev Shvius, you can't build steps down to the canal Mishi Yifsiku Agishamim, when the rains stop, because it's clear that you're building the steps in order that you should be able to irrigate the land during Shemitah. But you could build these steps on Shvias after the rain finishes in order that you should be able to use it for the 8th year. If you have a canal, you're not allowed to, on Shemitah, dam the canal with a seal of earth so that the water should stay in the field and irrigate the field. But you could put rocks there because it's not, the water passes through and it's not a dam. Even though we said you're not allowed to clear the field from rocks because it looks like you're trying to clear the field to plant, but any rock that's near this ravine that you want to reach over, and you could reach it with your hand from where you are in the canal, you could take the rock to make that divider, harizutinota. Avnei kosef, stones that you could carry on your shoulder, bois mikol makom, you could take from any place, because stones that are carried on the shoulder are obviously taken for construction and not to clear the field. Maybe it can't be taken just by one hand. It means that which you carry on your shoulder. If it's so big that only two or three can sit on your shoulder, you're allowed to clear them away from the field, because it's obvious that you're doing it for construction purposes. And now, as we learned the 10th Mishnah of the 3rd parak, if you're building a wall between your field and the Rishus Harabim, and therefore you have to dig to make the foundation, you could dig on the Shvius up till the virgin soil, up till virgin rock, because nobody will think that you're doing this to plant, because nobody plants right near the Rishus Harabim because people will step on the plants. Now you have a lot of earth. What do you do with the earth? You don't want to put it in the field because then it looks like you're spreading topsoil. So Rishus Harabim, you could pile it up temporarily in the Rishus Harabim, and then you could take it from the public domain and even put it in the field, because there it's clear you're only doing it to clear the public domain. Dear Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Kiva stoutly protests. You can't put a heap of earth in the public domain even temporarily. Somebody could get hurt. Rabbi Kiva, the way, just like you cannot damage the Rishus Harabim by putting temporarily a pile of earth in the Rosh Hashanah, even kachlo yisaknu. You can't even do it if, let's say, you're a good Samaritan and you want to clear the Rosh Hashanah from debris. You can't make a pile it up in the Rosh Hashanah. Somebody could hurt themselves. Ma yaseh ba'ofer. What do you do with the earth? It shouldn't look like you're spreading topsoil in the field. You could pile it up in 3 piles in the field, like we do with the dung, making 3 piles of 10 containers, each containing a lesach. And Rabbi Kiva tells us, if during the rest of the years you dig a pit, a trench, or a cave, you cannot even temporarily store the earth in the Rosh Hashanah. Okay, that was very long Mishnayos. As we move now on to a Gemara in Brachos on Daf Lamed Daled Lamed Aleph. Amar Rav Huna, Ta b'shalosh rishonos. If you make a mistake in the first 3 brachos of Shemona Esrei, chayzel l'rosh. You have to start by the beginning. You can't just, if you made a mistake, and let's say Mechayim Mesim, you just can't start over from Ata Gibar. You have to start over from the beginning of Shemona Esrei. But MCIs, we don't pass like Rav Huna, but Rav Huna says if you make a mistake in the middle brachos, chayzel Ata Chayna, you start from Ata Chayna in the beginning. Ba'achroinus, if you make a mistake in, let's say, in the middle of V'al Kulam, chayzel Avodah, you have to start back from Ritzei. Rav Asi says, no, each bracha of the Emtsayis is a bracha by itself. Rav Asi Emtsayis ein lahem seder, so if you make a mistake, you only replace that bracha, you don't have to go back to the beginning. Maser Rav Sheshes, if let's say, in those days they davened by heart, and the chazan got lost, he got fabumbled, where does the new chazan take over? From the beginning of the bracha that the chazan got mixed up in. So if he got mixed up in Ala Tzadikim, you start from Ala Tzadikim. You don't have to go back because he made a mistake all the way back to Ata Chaynein. So this is a tiyuf to Rav Huna. So Rav Huna will say, no, it means the beginning of the bracha means since the middle brachas are all like one bracha, according to Rav Huna, he would go back to Ata Chaynein. Amalach Rav Huna, and Tzayis Kula, the middle brachas are Kula Chada Birchasanin. They're all considered one bracha. Amar Rav Yehuda, La'ilam al Yishav Adam Srachov, you shouldn't ask personal requests, Loi B'Shal Shrishanis, not by the first 3 brachas, V'Loi B'Shal Shachrayis, not by the last 3 brachas, Ela Ba'emtzayis, personal requests are in the middle brachas. Damar Rab Chanina, Rishaynais, the first 3 brachas, Daimis Le'evet Shemisada Shavach L'fnei Rabbi, first he arranges praise of his master, Emtzayis, the middle brachas, Daimah Le'evet Shemavakesh Pras Rabbi, he asks for reward from his master, his needs. Achrayna, the last brachas daimis le'evet shekibel pras Rabbi. He got his reward, v'nifter v'ayilchlei, and now he takes leave with praise from Hashem to Hashem. Tan Rabbanan Ma'aser b'Talmud Echad. There was an incident with a certain Talmud. Sheyered lefnei ateva b'fnei Rabbi Eliezer. He davened for the Amud before Rabbi Eliezer. V'yamarich yosim midai, and he davened a very long Shemona Esrei. Amrullah Talmidav, so the disciple said, Rabbeinu, kama orchanu zeh. He's very lengthy. Amalahem, so he said to them, Klum marach yosim and Moshe Rabbeinu. Is he more lengthy than Moshe Rabbeinu? D'chsiv be'as abam ve'esnapel. The pasuk says, when esnapel of Hashem, and I fell before Hashem es abam ayom es abam alayla 40 days and 40 nights. He's not davening 40 days and 40 nights. Sometimes it's appropriate to daven long. Shuv Ma'aser b'Talmud Echad Sheyard L'fnei Ateva b'Fnei Rabbi Eliezer. He davened for the Amid, and he davened a very abbreviated prayer. Amalei Talmidim, so the disciple said, Kama Katzer Nuzeh, how abbreviated he is. Amalem Klum Katzer Yosem and Moshe Rabbeinu. Is he more abbreviated than Moshe Rabbeinu? That when his sister was suffering for tzaras, Dichsiv Kel Na, please Hashem Refa Na La, please Hashem cure her now. That was very quick. If you daven for someone, you don't need to say their name. Hashem, please cure her now. And it doesn't say Miriam's name. But like Kamat to Miriam. And now we learn a Zoyar in Bhaloscha. Rabbi Abba started with the pasuk Ashrei Yodei Sruah. Fortunate is the nation who knows how to blow the shofar. Hashem ba'or panecha ya'aleichem. Hashem, in the light of your presence, we go. Now, Haikro Kamua, this pasuk about the shofar we've already explained, but now we're going to take it in a different direction. Aval Tochazi, come and see. Zakoin Inun Yisrael. Fortunate is Yisrael, the Kutch Berichu Yahavloin Araisa Kadisha gave us the Holy Torah, V'oileflon Orchoi, and he taught us the ways Li'istapka Bey, to cleave to him, right? The Torah allows us to accomplish Dvekis, because the Torah Kutch Berichu V'araisa Chadu, so he taught us the ways that we could cleave to him, or Lemeter Pikude Daraisa, and to keep and guard the statutes of the Torah, lemiske behula alma da'asi, through it we merit the next world. V'kariv lu b'shata denavka b'mitzrayim, and he brought us close to him when we came out of Egypt. Kedain apiklon mirishusa achara, he took us out from someone else's possession, from the possession of Paro. V'saliklon, and he elevated us li'ischada b'shmei, to be one with his name, to be united with his name. Ukedain ikru b'nei Yisrael, and therefore we called b'nei Yisrael b'nei chorin mikaila, children that are freed from everything. The lo yasvut chais rishusa achra, we don't live anymore under another person's control. V'saliklon, and he elevated us la'achta b'shmei, to be united with his name. The Salik al-Kola, elevated above all. V'shalit, controlling al ilan v'taton. We're able to control the koiches of the alyonim and the tachtonim of the upper realm and the lower realm. Umigo richimusa dilhain, and because of his love to us, Kralan, he called us b'ni b'chayri Yisrael, my son, my firstborn Yisrael. Kigavna ilah, in the way of holiness. Valda, and therefore Ketol Kol Bechar, he killed all the firstborns, de la'ela, of the aristocracy, Visata, of the lower class, Vishara Ketirin, and he untied the ties, Va'asirin, and all of the binds that held us, the Ilah and Visatan, from above and below. Begin la'apakaline, in order to take us out. Va'avalan b'nei chayrin mikaila, and he made us free from everything. V'alda loy bo kutch, and therefore Hashem didn't need loy malach v'loy sarif, because Hashem loved us. He didn't need an angel. He didn't need a fiery angel. Ela'il, like we say in Haggadah, loy al yedei malach, v'loy al yedei sarif. So first, Nazir is saying that Hashem didn't staff it out. He didn't staff it. It's like when you want to buy your wife an anniversary present, don't staff it out to your secretary to buy that for your wife. You do it yourself. So Rabbi Shalom didn't staff it out to angels. He took care of it himself. And furthermore, he was the only one to recognize who amongst the Mitzrim were firstborns, because they were so promiscuous. He knew how to discern and have the knowledge who was a Bechar, who was not a Bechar, and he was able to undo all the ties of Kishif that we were tied up in Mitzrayim. He didn't give us over into the hands of another agent. He did it himself. On that night that Hashem wanted to kill all the firstborns, like it said, at the time when the night crept up, all of the angels wanted to sing as they do usually in the night. Amalon, so Hashem said to them, Lav idonu, it's not time. There's another more beautiful song that my children are singing on earth below, utilizing their Bechira. Beshata de Ispeleglelia, at the time of midnight, Issa Ruach Tzafan, the northern wind awakened, the Kuchiberichu, Kedain Oven Nukvin, he wreaked vengeance on the Egyptians, Yisrael Mezamrin, and Klal Yisrael sang, V'omrim Halayla B'kel Ram, and said the Hallel in a loud voice, Ukedain Avidlan B'nei Chayrin Mikaila. At that time, we became free from all Umalachim Elohim and the celestial angels, V'chol Ma'ashirion Kulo, and the entire Pamalia Shel Mala, the retinue of Hashem, Avatzais and Lahin, would listen, the Kalei and the Yisrael, to the voice of the Jews. Basid Iskizara, after we had the Milah, we know that night, Laila Kiyom Yor, it was like day, the night of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and we mauled ourselves, Rishimu Levatein, we marked our houses, Me'audama, from the blood of the Milah, Midama the Pischem, from the blood of the Pesach. Bislas Rishimen, we marked it in 3 places, Ala Mashkreif, upon the lintel, Val Shtem Mezuzais, and the 2 doorposts. My timer, what's the reason? Kmua, we already explained. Begin the EU Rishima Kadisha, it was a holy mark. Verelach Mispaiseses B'damayich, Vamalach B'damayich Chayi, B'damayich Chayi, through the blood we will live, through the blood we will live. Umechabla, and the agent of death, because besides Hashem killing the firstborns, there was ein bias asher ein shameis, so the mashkes also went out. Umechabla kad iu nafik, when he went out, v'chomei ahu dama du rashim al hu pischa, when he saw the blood marked on the lintel and the doorpost, chayes alai the Yisrael, he had mercy on Yisrael, ado d'chsiv upasach Hashem, and Hashem passed over ala pesach on the doors that had the blood. And now we learn a very fascinating musar. Wow. Really have to rush to get it in an hour, already at 46 minutes. We have 2 disciplines left, and this is a very interesting musar from the Sefer Hasidim. And basically, the Sefer Hasidim is going to tell us, even though you have something to say, and the person is deserving, but think about the end game. If what you say, is that going to cause just hate? Is that just going to cause discord? Then keep your mouth shut. Listen to what the Sefer Hasidim says. Alti buzz l'dibar achicha. Don't say degrading words to your brother. Kishu medaber b'derech gaiva dvarim. Even when he speaks with arrogance. She'ena das rivalton. And really, it's words that really are hard to tolerate, are hard to swallow. He's speaking in such a manner of a braggart and in arrogance, and noyach l'chol la'ashpiloi migaivasa, and really it would be easy for you to take him down a peg, u'lisayvsay b'dvarav, and to show him, to catch him in his words, and to show him how foolish he sounds. Al tochish b'zeh. Don't be concerned with this. Kimar tarviach b'davar. What are you going to gain? He's not going to listen to you, and you're just going to make an enemy. And therefore, al tekanter shum adam, don't start up with anyone. Vafilu nochri, even a guy, ki kasher ato tishkach, because even when you forgot what happened, he's going to remember. People have a long memory. Yia itoy lezikaron, and you never know, this guy who you thought was a nothing, and you could rebuke him, one day might be a powerful man. Kemaisa roya chazerim, like the Yerushalmi in Trumais tells us a story about a shepherd of pigs, of swine, who passed by the Talmidim in the Beis Medrash, and they belittled him. He was dealing with the swine in the mud, and later on, that swineherd became a king. He became a king. The Yerushalmi tells us his name was Diktal, and he terrorized the Yidden. So don't start up with people. Al tagvia kolcha lahashiv azus. Don't raise your voice to answer strongly to people. Even when you have to enforce something, don't raise your voice. Akol dvarecha tidaber ba'anova v'chavod. You should speak humbly with honor to a person. Ki divrei chachamim menachas nishmam. Because the words of the wise are heard when they're said gently. People think if they say, they'll listen. But the wise know that gentle, humble words are those that are listened to. And don't speak a lot of idle talk. When you're standing amongst people, don't engage in a lot of idle talk. And for sure, with women you shouldn't talk a lot. That could only lead to trouble. Now let's say you're minding your own business and there gathers around you a group of cynics. If cynics sit down amongst you and are medabrim divrei avai, and they're speaking words of foolishness, don't bother rebuking them. Al teichichem, don't rebuke them. How could you talk this way? What are you using your time for? Pen yisnucha, lest they hate you. You don't want to bring that upon yourself. But leich me'etzlam, try to extricate yourself from there as quickly as possible. Pen tilmoid mimaseim haroim, lest you learn from their evil ways. Ki alei tzanis, because a person that's a scoffer, a cynic, has very little shame. And people that don't have shame, that's a step away from promiscuity, from licentiousness. That leads to all kinds of immorality. And finally, as we learn the words of the Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah, Seder Tefillas Kachu, this is the way of prayer. B'shachar, in the morning, Mashkim Adam, a person gets up, Umavarich Brachas Elu, he makes the brachas of the Shachar, the 15 brachas, and Birchas HaTorah, and the brachas of Tzitzis and Tefillin. V'karya Azmiris, he says Psukei de Zimrei, Umavarich Lefnei Malachreim, makes Bar Shomer before and Yishtabach afterwards. V'karya Achkach Shema, Umavarich Lefnei Malachrei, he says Shema, and he says the brachas of Yotzerara, Avasoilam, and Gal Yisrael afterwards. And Medali Kedusha min habracha rishayna shelafaneha. When he says the Tefillah Balachash, the silent Shemana Esrei, he doesn't say Nekadesh or Nakdishach she'ein hayochad oimer Kedusha, because you can't say that alone. You need a minion. Ukishuchaisim Gal Yisrael, and when he finishes Brachat Hashem Gal Yisrael, he should start immediately Shemana Esrei. Miyad Yamayid, he should get up and say Shemana Esrei Kidei sheyismai Gula L'Tefillah, in order to be Semet Gula L'Tefillah. Rabbeinu Yainus says very nice, when you say Baruch Hashem Goal Yisrael, you have in mind that thank you Hashem who redeemed us in Mitzrayim because of Tefillah, right? It says Vayishma Hashem es tzakosam, and just like you listen to our Tefillahs then, please listen to our Tefillahs now. And he daven Shemana Esrei standing, which it's like the avodah of the karbanos. When he finishes Shemana Esrei Yeshiv, he sits down, v'yipol al panav v'mischanein, he falls upon his face and says Tachnun. When he finishes Tachnun, might be a Rosh, and he picks his head up from Tachman, and he says, Shem Yisrael, Shema Sheres Yisrael, and he sits with these supplications, and he says, Ashrei, Lamatzech, Uvalatzian, and he says supplications according to his strength, and then he goes to do business. And when he davens Mincha, Maska likway tila David miyushav. He says Ashrei sitting. V'akach oimen mispal. And he says Shemana Esrei mincha tfilas mincha. Ukishmashim, and after mincha noifel al panav, he falls and says Tachnun and mischanan, supplicates before Hashem. Umagbiya roisha, he lifts up his head, mischanan kifi koichoi, and he says Shema Yisrael. And of course he says Aleinu v'yipater, and then he leaves the massive to continue his business. Over Sfilas Erev, and by Marav Kari Kriyashma, he says Kriyashma, Umavarch Lefanel Achrei, he makes the bracha of Marav Aravim, and B'chabam Yisrael B'Yava, and he's Samech Gula L'Tfila again with Gal Yisrael, Umispal Moment, he davens Shemana Esrei, Sheyashlam, when he finishes Shemana Esrei, Yeshiv Ma'at, he sits a little bit, V'yipater, and he parts from Hashem, V'amischan in Achat Filas Aris, and if he says some supplication after Marav, Arizem Meshuvach, it's praiseworthy. And even though he says the tefillah that he should go to sleep in peace, which is a very important tefillah, we shouldn't have troubling dreams, we shouldn't fight with our wives, we shouldn't have insomnia, we should be safe in our homes. But even though he says Ashkivenu after Go Yisrael, that doesn't interrupt that it shouldn't be Semech Gula L'Tfila, Ein Hefsek Ben Gula L'Tfila, because Ashkivenu is considered Bracha Arichta Damya, Ketfila Arichta Damya, Varishteyim, both Gal Yisrael and Ashkivenu, is Kebracha Achas Aruka, is considered like one long Tfila. What a pleasure, Rabbi Isai, to share with you a 54-minute Chok. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful day.